Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for being with us today for what is day 4 of our language learning masterclass. My colleague Laura is still with us today. Hi, Laura.
Hi everyone.
Thank you very much for making the time to be with me today. Now, just a quick recap. We've already had 3 days of masterclass. So, day 1, we talked about lack of motivation and progress. Number 2, we went over what happens when you don't have an immersive environment to learn or practice in. And then on day 3, we touched on a very sore subject for most language learners, and this is all about not having a very regular routine in your language learning journey. So we hope that day 1, day 2, and day 3 were very useful. Remember to reach out to us personally to share any insights and breakthrough, or even ask more questions. It truly is what this masterclass is all about. We're there to help you and share our knowledge. We talk to you on Monday about how we have acquired that knowledge, whether it was from birth or at school or through an immersive environment or through, professional experience, and we just really want to share. Now, day 4, we said you have a challenge, we have a solution. And today, the challenge, which I believe is shared by many. Actually, Laura, I don't believe that challenge is something that someone could say, oh, no, I don't worry about it. Like, I really think 100% of language learners have
100%.
one day thought, this is happening to me. And the
Definitely.
challenge is worrying about making mistakes. So put your hand up if you've never thought, oh, I'm all right. I don't worry about making a mistake when I'm speaking in French or Spanish or Italian or Russian or Polish. Now, we are going to give you little tips about this, but fundamentally, this is quite straightforward. Laura and I both agree on that, and we really, really want to stress that perfection is not the goal in language learning. And I know that Laura will talk to you about this a little bit later. What I want to say is that making mistakes when you learn a foreign language really is an inherent part of the process. It sounds simple, but it really is. And it is absolutely crucial for improvement. You cannot learn a foreign language if you don't make mistakes. As a matter of fact, think about everything that you are currently learning or you have learned in your life. Learning to drive a car, learning to be good at science or maths, anything. The idea was to make as little mistakes as possible. Language learning is the other way around. So that's the good news for you today. Language learning is completely the other way around. The more mistakes you make, the more you are trying, the more you are learning, the more you are practicing, the more you are telling your brain to mold this new language into these language boxes that you have. So this sounds a little silly, extremely simple, but please remember that language learning is all about making mistakes. No one has ever learned a foreign language well without making a ton of mistakes. It's part of it. So please see it as an inherent, and crucial part of the process. That's rule number 1. Now, it really means that you have to normalize the fears that kind of are associated to making mistakes. I'm going to make a fool of myself. I'm going to look like an idiot. People are going to feel that I'm not capable of holding this important role in the company. My husband's family in Italy think I'm not very bright because I can't express myself very well. Let me tell you that we've said that during day one as well. Language is communication, and communication is something that we do 80% of the time. When we're not able to communicate in a foreign language in the same way that we do in our native tongue, those fears just pop up in our brains immediately. I personally have had experience of that. You know, when I moved over to the US, I had just turned 18. I just graduated from high school. I thought I was good at English. It was a subject at school that I favored. But learning British English in a classroom environment, very traditional classroom environment, 35 years ago, to actually being in the Midwest, in a family in the United States with the accent and the different grammar, that completely threw me. And so suddenly I thought, well, I had this impression that my language skills were quite good. I think I was being very naive. And then I worked at it because I really wanted to perfect that language. And then I went out to shops and people looked down on me. So on some occasions, people were quite disrespectful to me. And I just thought, wow, it made me feel like this when I was, in my native tongue. I'm quite a confident person. In English, I was here. So all these fears that people have with um, speaking a foreign language or even learning the language, I don't have a language brain. No one speaks a foreign language in my family. These are stories you're telling yourself. Everyone can be bilingual. We could have an entire lecture on that, could be, Laura. When you were born, your native tongue was a foreign language to your brain. So if your brain was clever enough to absorb one, another one can be absorbed. We all learn at a different pace, but let me tell you, everyone can be bilingual. And it's not to do with your intellectual abilities. So with this in mind, I'm telling you, okay, normalize these fears and just understand that mistakes are crucial to the process. So I know what you're going to say. Well, that's all well and good, Natalie, but I mean, like, okay, you're just telling me to get over it. I am a little bit. What concretely can I do? So I've got 3 tips for you today. The first one is find a community to share your language with. Why? Because everyone is going to be in the same boat. People are going to have different skills and people are going to have different strengths and weaknesses. So people are very good at absorbing the language. They really have an ear for the language and they're able to produce a very good, accurate accent fairly quickly. Other people have a great analytical mind, and so for them, structure and grammar is a walk in the park. But their listening skills, for example, may not be so good. So you'll all have different skills and strengths and weaknesses. You'll all be making mistakes. So being part of a community where you can share these mistakes and you can share your learning is really, really good. And, we have a lot of students who come to our academy because they want to be part of the community. We host here communities who want to meet up to just have a chat in a foreign language over a glass of wine. Yesterday, we talked about residential programs. You could go on one of these residential programs and realize that everyone, even those who invest in an immersive program abroad, make mistakes. So find a community that you can share your language learning journey with. I think that's going to make a huge difference, and what you think are big mistakes are going to look really small when you share them. The second thing is humor the mistakes. Once you laugh at yourself for making certain mistakes, it becomes really easy to then try, because there's a drop in. If you make mistakes, then you'll just laugh about it. And let me tell you, when you are with friends and you talk to them about the fact that you're learning English, French, Spanish, Italian, Arabic, do you have a good laugh on a Friday night when you say, well, let me tell you, my French grammar, I'm so good. I got it first time. No secret for me. I'm super good at it. Or do you have a laugh when you say, oh, guess what I did in my French class? I thought this was this and this was that, and I made everyone laugh. I think you'll find that it's the latter. Humor is very important in the language learning process. It makes things so much easier. And actually, talking about humor and talking about the environment and the community, put these two together. And my first tip would be evolve in a positive environment. Whether you are learning Italian because your wife is Italian and you go and spend time with her family on a regular basis, whether for work you really need to perfect your English skills, whether it's more of a classroom setup because you actually have structured and regular coaching to learn the language. If in any of these environments the attitude of people around you is negative, and what I mean by negative is that the emphasis is on your mistakes rather than the fact that you are trying, and every time you are trying you are improving, ditch it. Like, let me be really blunt. I have seen work environment where people were really trying to practice and own their language skills, and they were being put down because rather than appreciating the fact that their language was pretty good, we were telling them that that pronunciation wasn't good, that their intonation wasn't quite right, that they used a different tense, a tense wrongly. I have had students come in and saying, I'm really trying to speak to my family when I go over to Germany, but people feel the need to correct me every time I make a mistake. And then we have had people saying, I'm feeling very demoralized after 3 months of language classes because it is all about the accuracy of what I'm producing. Neither of those are right for you. So remove yourself from these environments or have a little chat with these people to say, I'm here to learn, okay? I'm not here to be 100% accurate. I will never be if I don't learn progressively. So please be kind, show me empathy, be part of the game, humor me, don't immediately correct me all the time. I just want to come back on the correction a little bit. At some point, you need constructive criticism and you need to understand where you are making mistakes. Absolutely. What I'm trying to say here is that you do not want to be learning in an environment where every single mistake is being picked up, because that is completely counterproductive. I'll just want to use a very sweet little story that I used to call a cobweb a web cob. I don't know why. And I remember that my mother-in-law, who is English, used to say, well, she never said anything. And then one day, I must have said it a few times. And one day she went, darling, you do know that it's a cobweb, not a web cob. But I mean, your English is so good. I wanted to say it's just that because I thought you'd like to know, but your English is so good. She was using the teaching method of like praise, improve, praise. And I said, oh, really? So anyway, we laughed about it. I still laugh about it. And I thought, oh, I'll have to remember that. And she says, well, in the alphabet, the C comes before the W. And I thought, what a good little tip. And I've always remembered it, and I've never made the mistake again. But I'm using this example because, to illustrate that you need to be in an environment where people care about your language learning journey and people are being helpful. And being helpful is not correcting every single one of your mistakes. And the other example that I would like to use, and then I will let Laura develop on that a little bit more, is that, when I said earlier, just go for it, because that is the only way that you will progress. I ran a residential program to France a few years ago. I went to the Champagne region. It was really, really lovely. Everything was in French. There's a few English people there. So, on occasion, they would have a little chat in English, but otherwise, the sightseeing was in French. We had French lessons in the morning, or the French restaurant. Everyone spoke French. It was just really lovely. And there was a couple of students who were at a kind of beginner plus level. It wasn't always easy for them, but they were very happy to be immersed in the language and they were doing very well. But I noticed after a few days that one of them wasn't speaking much. So we would go into a bakery or a restaurant and he would pretty much hide behind the others, or just say very, very short sentences. And to the contrary, his friend just went for it. And his grammar wasn't always accurate because I was kind of sat there listening, but he just went for it. After 3 days only, we were having a drink, and the guy who was trying said, this is really good. After 3 days, I don't know if my French has improved, but I feel like I can climb mountains. Like, we hear French all the time. I'm really proud that I've been trying to speak to people, even if my, sense are really short. And then he said, oh, I've learned. So can you think of a few words that you may have learned? So he started to give me lots of different words, like things from the bakery, things from the road, like how to say cross the street or everything like that. Words he'd seen on signs. And even I was gobsmacked that his list was really long. His friend said, oh, I don't have half of those. So his friend did the same exercise and he literally had about a quarter. And I said to him, the thing is this: when you are worried that you are making mistakes, you close your brain down. You don't open your brain to the learning opportunities, to the, immersive opportunities for him at the time. And he said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, you walk into the bakery and you're just going to go for it. And your grammar may not be accurate and some of the words may not be right. But I tell you what, the lady still understands. That gives you a great boost of confidence. You are basically training your brain that it's okay to start speaking, even if you're not 100% sure what you're going to say. And suddenly your brain opens up, is comfortable in the environment, and start to absorb the learning. We talked about evolving and learning in an immersive environment yesterday. And we also talked about the fact that all the words and new expressions that you are absorbing, a lot of them are simply going in your subconscious. Like, you are not going to logically connect with all of them and go, right, new word, new expression. It doesn't work like that. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. But it takes between 5 and 7 takes for you to be able to absorb the language and say whatever you've just learned. But it goes in your brain. It goes in your brain somewhere and it will come out one day. So you are really doing yourself, you're not doing yourself a favor, is what I'm trying to say, by not trying, because you are really, really missing out on learning opportunities. To me, to use a very simple analogy, It's a little bit like going to the gym and just walk on the treadmill. You're there. You've made the effort to go to the gym. You put your kit on. You're paying for the gym. Just try and run a little bit. You don't have to do a marathon. You don't have to run a sprint. You don't have to lose 500, pounds, whatever. I'm not very good with English measures still after 25 years, but you don't have to lose any weight running like crazy. No, you can just walk a little bit because that's what you're there for. And it still be a good exercise. So if you are in a language classroom, if you are with your family at work, if you enter a shop, try, because you are there already, but by not trying, you are closing your brain to learning opportunities. And that's a real shame because you want to progress. So I hope that this was useful. It's something that is really close to my heart because we welcome hundreds of students through our different offices a year. And this is something that we hear a lot about. And there's a real mindset and belief behind it, but there's also little tips like finding the community, humor yourself, and really, really make sure that you are only ever learning in a positive environment. Laura, I think that you have a little bit more to share with us on that topic, so over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a little thing I want to conclude with. And I really want to emphasize on what Natalie said, that perfection is not the goal of language learning or of communication. The goal of language learning and the goal of communication is to be understood. As long as you are being understood, then you are achieving that goal. Whether the sentence you say is flawless or whether there are mistakes, it doesn't matter. I'm a native English speaker. If you've been listening to me all of this week, you will have heard that some of my sentences, despite the fact that I am a native English speaker, I grew up in England, English is my native language, I did most of my schooling in England, I still have made some mistakes when I'm speaking, and so will you in your everyday life. Whenever you speak, even your native language, sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we say things that we don't mean to say, sometimes we start sentences and then we restart them. That's just part of communication. And yet you can probably still understand, well, I hope you can still understand everything that I said, even though I've made some little mistakes. That is just part of speaking any language, whether it's foreign language, whether it's your native language. And the next thing I would want to address is that 100% accuracy does not exist. 100% proficiency does not exist. So what do those two mean? What is the difference between them? 100% accuracy is what I was just saying about how even when you speak speech is spontaneous. It's something that we sort of plan to say as we're speaking, as we're thinking. That's why it's more difficult to speak than it is to write, which means that 100% accuracy does not exist, is what I just said to you. 100% proficiency also does not exist. So what do I mean by that? I mean that, again, even as a native English speaker, if I went and spent the day in hospital and shadowed a surgeon at work and listened to all of his conversations, there's going to be a lot of things that he says that I don't understand, even in my native language. Same if I go and shadow a builder at work, for example, and I'm on a construction site. I'm still not going to understand everything that he says to me. And that doesn't mean I'm not a highly proficient English speaker, I'm a native English speaker, but it just means that it's not an area of the language that I'm familiar with. So don't worry about not having 100% proficiency, because it doesn't exist. As long as you can vocabulary and use the structures that you need to communicate what you need to communicate, then that is enough. That is what you should be aiming for. That is what you should be reaching for. 100% proficiency in a language does not exist. Even think about how many new words are being added to your dictionary year on year. I think if I spoke to my grandparents, there would be a lot of things that I would say they wouldn't even understand. And these are still words that exist in the language, but that native speakers don't always know. Language is forever changing, and it's not something that you can fully 100% acquire. We talk about language acquisition as if it's something that you can acquire or not, whereas actually it's just a process. And as long as you have the language that you need to communicate what you want to communicate, then that is what you should be aiming for. I want to finish with a little anecdote that if you follow Natalie and I on LinkedIn, you may have seen recently. Natalie was on holiday. She was skiing, and we were messaging in English.
Yeah, I sent you a picture.
Yes, you sent me a picture
Whilst
of
you were
this.
in the office, and I was
I
in
was
the
in the
office.
office working hard. Natalie was on holiday. She sent me a nice little picture. And I said, "Oh, that's so pretty. It's lovely. It's beautiful. What ski station are you at?" I have never skied in English. I skied in French, meaning that I didn't know that the English word for professional skier is ski station is a ski resort. Natalie, as a non-native speaker of English, had to correct me and tell me the proper vocabulary to talk about a ski resort in English. See, native speakers make mistakes. The language that you have is only based on the language that you are exposed to and the language that you need.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen all the time, and it's really not a big deal. Natalie still understood what I meant, and it was fine. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that everyone who's listening to us today really needs to remember that even in your native tongue, you don't master, you know, the whole language. I know very little about science. If you put me in a laboratory tomorrow, there will be tons of, new terms that I would need to learn. So it isn't about accuracy. It really is about making yourself understood. Once you can make yourself understood and you have the confidence to go ahead and open your brain to new learning opportunities, then that's when you will really improve and your language will be more and more and more accurate. I still make mistakes. I still sometimes, prepositions in English are fairly hard. It should say to or at. So I'll sometimes go, oh, should I say that? I have on occasion asked Laura to check, a written paragraph for me to make sure that my grammar was correct. That's after 25 years living in the UK. So really, 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 if you remember nothing from today's masterclass, please remember that 100% accuracy doesn't exist. It simply doesn't. We're talking about a language and a method of communication. We're not talking about mathematical equations. Okay, so really normalize this idea that sometimes you're not going to be really confident. Sometimes you are going to make mistakes, but unless you do so, you'll never progress. So today, all we want to say is please make mistakes. Please make mistakes, because if you do so, then we know that when we'll meet here next year, you will have progressed, undoubtedly. Anything you want to add, Laura?
No, that was everything. As you said, love about yourself. Know that everyone makes mistakes. It's just part of the journey.
Well, we hope that today has been useful, and we'll see you same time, 7 p.m. UK time tomorrow night for the last masterclass. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Bye.